Well, last week Ross told us about learning and listening with his L's and Joseph's journey in that from Matthew chapter 1. And we're going to continue on a little bit here in Matthew chapter 2. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the time of King Herod, Magi or wise men from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and we've come to worship him." We're going to stop there and just take a little break sideways. These Magi or wise men, who were they? Well, they were scholars or astronomers certainly, because they were looking at stars. We might have considered them perhaps the scientists of the day. And they came from east of Jerusalem, Bethlehem. One possibility is that they came from Babylon, which is in Iraq now. And there's a possible Daniel connection. You may remember Daniel was a Jewish captive in Babylon about 600 BC, and he was appointed by Nebuchadnezzar as chief of the Magi, or chief in his court. And it may be that these Magi perhaps have come from the line of Daniel's school, we might say, and if so, perhaps they knew something of the Jewish people and the prophecies. How many were there? Well, traditionally we think of three. We only think of three because of the three gifts. It's not actually mentioned in the Bible that there were three. And in Eastern traditions, they work on 12 wise men. And over time, these wise men have become kings, and they've even been given names. So the star, what did they see? Well, it was certainly a star or something significant in the night sky that indicated the birth of the king. Was it something real? Was it a supernova or a nova or a comet perhaps? Or maybe a meteor or some alignment of planets or an angel? We don't really know, and if you do a lot of Google searching, you'll find one of each of those is a questionable answer. Let's go to the scripture and have a look at a couple of things from Isaiah and Psalms. "Lift up your eyes and look to the heavens. Who created all these? Who brings out the starry host one by one and calls forth each of them by name? Because of his great power and mighty strength, not one of them is missing." And in Psalms, "The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge. They have no speech, they use no words, no sound is heard from them, and yet their voice goes out to all the earth, their words to the ends of the world." God created the stars, he's put them where he wants them to be, and the whole universe declares the glory of God. Well, this Bethlehem star, Google, as I said, has got lots of suggestions but no clear answer. There's some fascinating work being done by a guy called Rick Larson, and he has a DVD called The Star, and you can follow all of the data that he's come up with in a website page, thebethlehemstar.com. And I want to share some of his work with you. I found it extraordinarily fascinating when I first saw all of this. He's done extensive research into the stars. We know that the stars in the sky have predictable motion across the sky, and they move at about half the pace of the hour hand on the clock, so you've got to stand still for a long time to see them move, but they do slowly move, as we know. Now, the first question, if you're going to go looking for the Bethlehem star to find out what it really was, you've got to work out when to look. Well, surprise, surprise, Jesus was not born on the 25th of December in the year zero. We tend to think that's the case, but when the modern calendar was created, the monk who was doing the work trying to work out when Jesus was born so he could set the zero date got it wrong by a few years. We know from Matthew that Jesus was born when Herod the Great was alive, and Herod the Great was thought to have died in 4 BC based on some of the writings of Josephus. And we know that Herod ordered the baby boys in Bethlehem 2 years and under to be killed. We know that from Matthew 2 verse 16, meaning that Jesus was born a few years before Herod the Great died. So traditionally it was thought he was born between 7 and 4 BC. Kepler, the clever man who in the 1600s worked out the laws of planetary motion, looked backwards by working out how things would work back in 4 and 7 BC, but he struggled to find anything in the sky that he could make fit the Star of Bethlehem. There was what they call a conjunction, which is the close approach of two planets to each other, Jupiter and Saturn, in 7 BC, but it's got a number of problems fitting into what we think the Star of Bethlehem was. More recently, Rick Larson's research found that there are a number of scholars who support a 1 BC date for the death of Herod. And it seems there was a copying error in some of Joseph's manuscripts, and the earlier versions of his manuscripts seem to suggest Herod died in 1 BC. And if that's the case, then we've got to go to a different year and go looking in the years of 3 and 2 BC. And that's what Rick Larson did. So if we wind the clock backwards in terms of the stars, you can use computer software these days to do this, and if you get computer software, you can do it yourself. You can look back into the night sky. You can look back into the night sky from any place on Earth in any direction you want. And so we ran his software back to those dates, 3 and 2 BC, and had a look to see if there was anything interesting going on. And in September 3 BC, which was the time of the Jewish New Year, Jupiter, which is the largest planet, the king planet as it's known, moved very close to a star called Regulus, which is a star that goes by the name of King as well. So the king planet and the king star move very close together in a conjunction. Jupiter glides slowly past Regulus about every 12 years, so it's not an unknown phenomena, although the one in 3 BC was very close. Jupiter arises in the east each night, but as a planet, it can sometimes appear to reverse course and move backwards through the sky. And this ability of the planets to seem to stop in the sky or move backwards means they're often called wandering stars. Planets that do so are still moving through space, but we're on an Earth that's moving as well. So it's a bit like passing a car on the freeway and the car next to you is going backwards, but it's actually not going backwards, you're just moving faster than it's moving. So for that reason, planets can appear to go backwards in the sky. After passing close together, Jupiter continued on its way, and then it actually started going backwards in the sky, and it moved back towards Regulus for a second conjunction, after which it reversed course again and went back past Regulus for a third time. And a triple pass like that is quite rare. And over a period of months, our watching Magi would have seen the king planet dance what you might call a halo around the Star of Kings, and you might consider that perhaps a coronation. So here's Jupiter and Regulus close together, and if you track Jupiter in the sky, it does this triple pass past Regulus there. That's a little bit interesting, but what's actually more interesting is that that occurrence occurred within the constellation of Leo, the lion. And the lion is the symbol of the tribe of Judah from which Jesus came. And that's quite interesting, and that possibly attracted the attention of the Magi as to where the king might have been born. So with your star maps, you can whack on where the constellations are, and there's all that happening in the constellation Leo. But there's more. As Jupiter was beginning the coronation of Regulus, another startling symbol arose in the sky. The constellation of stars which rises behind Leo is Virgo, the Virgin. When Jupiter and Regulus are first meeting, Virgo rose with the sun behind it and the moon at its feet. And it was a new moon, symbolically birthed at the feet of the Virgin. New moon because it's a Jewish New Year as well. There's an interesting passage if you look in Revelation. A great and wondrous sign appeared in the heavens. A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. And she gave birth to a son, a male child who will rule all the nations. So this is what it would have looked like. There's the sun, and that's Virgo rising. And if you look almost in the middle of the picture there's a tiny little new moon with an almost invisible crescent there showing. So what a powerful arrangement that would have been in terms of the alignment of the stars signalling the coming of Jesus. And Rick suggests that perhaps rather than signalling the birth of Jesus, this might have signalled the moment of conception, because the Jewish people believe that life begins at conception. So when Rick went then and had a look in the sky 9 months after that event, so we're now up to 2 BC, June, there were some more amazing things to have a look at. By June 2 BC, 9 months after Jupiter and Regulus have done their little dance, Jupiter's finished crowning Regulus, and it continued travelling through the sky to another spectacular rendezvous. And this time it was with Venus, the mother planet. The conjunction of Jupiter and Venus was so close that they could not be separated by the naked eye. Jupiter and Venus are both the brightest planets, brighter than stars, and together they would have appeared as the brightest star in the sky. It would have been the brightest star anyone had ever seen in their life. And this event took place as the planets were setting in the west, which would be the direction of Jerusalem if you're in Babylon. So in June 17, 2 BC, the brightest planets, Venus and Jupiter, would have appeared to observers in the east to have merged together just before setting in the direction of Bethlehem to the west. By December 2 BC, Jupiter would have been south of Jerusalem, right over top of Bethlehem, which is a few miles south of Jerusalem. If you're in Jerusalem and you want to go to Bethlehem, it's like walking from Warragul to Druin. And that's exactly where Matthew said the Magi saw the star. So imagine you're the Magi, you get up early in the morning after talking to Herod and you set out from Jerusalem, and blow me down, there's Jupiter right over top of Bethlehem. And what do you know? It starts another backwards movement at that time, which would have made it appear to stop. So there's the two planets right next to each other. We can tell, of course, now with telescopes or zooming in that they never actually joined, but they were so close that with the human eye you wouldn't have been able to separate them. And there's a little track there where Jupiter did its backwards move to effectively stop over top of Bethlehem. So these were some amazing signs in the sky, and it seems to me that Rick Larson's suggestion may very well be the Star of Bethlehem that the Magi saw. Whatever the star was, we need to remember it's not the star that we worship, but the baby King Jesus that the star was pointing to. Our faith's not in a star, but in a person. And the star was a signpost, one that the wise men paid attention to and acted upon. We'll continue our reading from Matthew. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. In Bethlehem in Judea, they replied, for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means the least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. The Magi would have come to Jerusalem because that's where you'd expect to find a new king in Israel. Herod was disturbed by what he heard. He and the people in Jerusalem would have seen the stars in the sky, but they did not understand the significance until the Magi perhaps explained what they'd seen and the context of that starry dance. Herod asks the chief priests and the teachers of the law where the Messiah would be born. And yes, they knew. They quote from the prophet Micah, Bethlehem is the birthplace. Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I may go and worship him." And after they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it appeared to stop over the place where the child was. And on coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. And then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, of frankincense and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. So 3 gifts: gold, a symbol of kingship; frankincense and incense, for a priest, a symbol of deity; and myrrh, an embalming oil, a symbol of death, and for us of sacrifice. Well, when did the Magi come? Well, it's very unlikely that they arrived at the same time as the shepherds. We know from Matthew that Jesus was in a house at this stage, and Herod killed all the baby boys 2 years of age and under, so the first appearance of the star or whatever's got to go back about 2 years or so, and it would have taken some time for them to travel. In the traditional Christian calendar, the Feast of Epiphany, which is 12 days after Christmas, is the traditional day for the wise men to arrive, and that would be January the 6th. So that's why we've moved our wise men away from the manger and put them over here, because they're still on their way. It's likely that it was sometime after, and if you go by Rick Larson's star suggestion and all of those dates, it's probably about 6 months after the actual birth when they arrived to see Jesus. I'm interested to notice, though, that somebody missed it all. Herod missed it, but what about the Jewish priests and the teachers of the law? There's no record of them getting to the manger. They knew the prophecy, they were expecting the Messiah, they knew he was coming, but they missed the opportunity to be there. I don't know why they didn't go with the wise men. Goodness me, it's only Warragul to Druin distance from Jerusalem to Bethlehem. It's hardly any way to walk at all. Perhaps they didn't believe the Magi. Perhaps they thought, these people are only foreigners. What would they know? Surely God would tell us first. After all, we're his people, not them. Perhaps sometimes we're too set in our thinking that God only speaks in certain ways. We can restrict God to the box that we've created for him, and perhaps we're not open to hear him communicate sometimes differently. And our theology can sometimes restrict us from seeing God at work in ways that we don't expect. It can restrict us from hearing from him because we think perhaps that he's not active outside the church or the Christian community. And we forget that he's active everywhere and that he's working every day to communicate with people however he can, whatever way he can, particularly in things that they may be interested in. So I'm hoping this Christmas that you won't miss it and that we don't miss Jesus. There are rumours of God everywhere. Creation shouts out about an intelligent design. Nature, sunsets are hard to look at without thinking that there's something else. Stars and the universe, that's enough to make most of us feel very small. Love, the very existence of love tells us that we are more than just physical matter, more than just a collection of biological cells. Lots of us have a sense that there's more to life than just this. And of course, Jesus, in his death and his resurrection and his life, showed us God in human form. If you want to see what the character of God's like, we just need to look at Jesus. And God is everywhere if you take the time to look. God is with us not just at Christmas time, he's with us all year, every day. So I'm hoping that you don't miss him this Christmas. God's at work doing something special every day. The Magi noticed and they took action. If you look for him, you'll find him at work in your world. God came to be with us in Jesus, and he's here, he's there, in your world, in our community, and in our world. Ross last week talked about when he responded to an awareness of God wanting him to pray for a sick child. I know of others who have similarly responded to the prompting of God at very appropriate times. I've also been aware of times when I've missed the opportunity to be part of God doing something in someone's life. Have you missed the opportunity to help someone, to forgive someone, to continue loving someone when it seems hard? Perhaps to give someone a long overdue hug this Christmas. I encourage you to visit someone, call someone, pray for someone, listen to someone, talk with someone, share a coffee or a meal with someone. All of these things are opportunities to work with God at being Emmanuel, God with us in our world. And as we do so, we get to watch God bring himself into their life and into ours. So don't miss the chance to bring the love of God and be part of God coming into your world and into someone else's world. That's what God did at Christmas when Jesus was born. Emmanuel, God with us. The priests and the religious leaders missed it. They missed the opportunity to be involved with God's actions in their world. So don't be like them. Be wise and follow Jesus to the one who the star pointed to. Keep your senses open, looking for him at work in your world, and join God as he invites you to bring heaven to earth this Christmas. May you join with the wise men in worship and wonder in all of the days and weeks ahead as you participate in God with us. Amen.